Remember, in the Paleoproterozoic, we had mountain formation, we had the very first ice age, and we had a lot of banded iron formations forming that we still mine today. Now we're going to move forward to the MesoProterozoic. This is when Earth's first supercontinent started to break up, and there were massive eruptions of copper-rich basaltic lava flows. All right, so let's go into more detail here. Earth's very first supercontinent we call Nuna. It began to break up 1.4 billion years ago. This map shows an image of Nuna, and you can see a lot of the land masses that we know of today. They looked a lot different back then. They were shaped differently, but they were all together in this one supercontinent called Nuna. And as Nuna began to divide, Laurentia was one of the segments that broke away, and Laurentia is what we know now as North America. Now, as Nuna was breaking up, Laurentia experienced rifting about 1.2 to 1 billion years ago. And during this time, mantle convection was welling up, thinning the crust, spreading the crust, breaking it apart. A giant rift opened in what is now the Great Lakes region. This is one of the reasons, just one, that the Great Lakes are low in elevation, because it's an ancient rift valley. And huge volumes of basaltic lava poured out of these giant rifts. Right? Now, for reasons that we don't know, the rifting stopped, which meant that the lakes were formed, but they never grew into an ocean. Luckily, because then we wouldn't have the continent that we have today. Now, as these basaltic lavas were pouring out in these huge rifts, the scene was basically hell on earth, right? The region the size of Indiana was completely engulfed in searing heat from these lava flows, steaming, acrid volcanic fumes. And these lava flows actually had a lot of pure copper deposits within them. Right, so this image, you can see the basalt, which is black, but within the pore spaces, copper was deposited. So long before the Europeans arrived in North America in the late 1600s, copper deposits were mined by Native Americans. Okay. Then after Europeans colonized North America, the copper production boomed in this region around the Great Lakes. And by the mid-1970s, production had pretty much ceased. So we don't have a lot of copper mining happening there today, but a lot of the copper that we have mined came from these deposits that were formed during the Mesoproterozoic, when the Great Lakes before they were actually the Great Lakes, were just a rift valley.